Today we welcome Jim Hurd, who is also a member of our club, so not a stranger here. 3 years ago, before I joined, he gave an excellent presentation to the club, which is available on YouTube, and I watched it, on Michigan copper, the Keweenaw Peninsula, then and now, and it's great if any of you have not seen it. Jim is a native of Chautauqua, New York, which is near Buffalo, where he discovered his love of collecting and along with his parents joined the Buffalo Mineral Club. He started college at Erie County Tech and then transferred to Michigan Technological University, known as Michigan Tech, where he earned a BS in mechanical engineering and also enjoyed taking mineral and geology courses. He later returned to Michigan Tech for graduate school in mining engineering. Michigan Tech's located in Houghton on the Keweenaw Peninsula, which is the north edge of the Upper Peninsula surrounded by Lake Superior. This is copper country, thus his talk. Houghton is also known as a winter city with an average snowfall of more than 18 feet a year. So Michigan Tech, they are known as the Huskies, and their mascot is Blizzard T Husky, with the T standing for the Blizzard the Husky. And they've won 3 national hockey championships, which is especially meaningful since Houghton is the birthplace of professional hockey in the United States in 1903. So that explains why Jim loves snowmobiling and enjoys the winter activities. After grad school, Jim spent more than 30 years in West Virginia, working in and around the coal mines for U.S. Steel. He is a member and former president of the Kanawha Rock and Gem Club in Charleston, West Virginia, as well as members in several other mineral clubs and societies. He enjoys frequent trips back to copper country to collect and enjoy the area and be with his family. His wife, Bonnie, shares a love of rock hounding and the lapidary arts. And Jim, in recent years, has taught chainmail jewelry as well as making bolos, perhaps with Michigan agates. We shall see. So we're very grateful that Jim is presenting to us today, all tied up with bolos. And I'm very honored to introduce Jim Hurd.
I get my picture off of here for now. Anyway, all this came about. Michelle McMurtry from a member of the Eastern Federation. I've gone to Wildacres now for 20 years I've been going, and of late I actually wear about maybe 3 to 4 bolos a day, different ones. I change during the day, and as a result of that, Michelle approached me, says, "You ought to do a program on this." So you can blame her for this program. She didn't do it, but she was the instrumental person in charge of it. And she's a member of the Gem, Lapidary, and Mineral Society of the District of Columbia. Now, I guess that's, you're going to have to tell me, is that one of your rival clubs in DC? Any comments?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, we don't have one. We're really sister clubs, so we really support each other.
Oh, rivals. Okay. Well, that's good. So this is, I'm going to start out with a little bit of history. I didn't know that much about it. I've been playing with bolos since the latter part of the 50s and early 60s, but I didn't know that much about it myself until I got into doing this program. And that, yes, I'm going to minimize that. Come on. And get it over here out of the way. There we go. Okay. So, as was written up in the newsletter, This is all tied up with bolos, and this is my presentation to you in October of 2024. And let's start at the beginning. When did it all start? The first big question that needs to be answered is it a bolo or a bola? I didn't know, so I started researching it. Good old Wikipedia. They notice that the bolo tie is sometimes called a bola or a shoestring tie. It's a type of necktie consisting of a piece of cord, a braided leather, with a decorative metal tip called aguiletes, if my Spanish is any good, and secured with an ornamental slide or clasp. Now, there's a bit of the origin of this bolo tie it comes from a Western anecdote. It says one day, cowboy named Victor Emmanuel Cedarstaff was riding his horse when his hat blew off. When he was afraid of losing his fancy hat band, he cleverly slipped it around his neck. It's believed that his companion sarcastically, yes, complimented him on his beautiful tie. And so this started the whole thing. And the origin of that came from an article in the Arizona Sunset. And there's an article where he actually patented the bolo. Well, in researching the patent, he didn't patent the bolo or bola. He just patented the slide for the necktie. But as you can see from the picture, it's got all the parts. It's got a slide, it's got the cord, it's got the tips. And so this is how it began. And that was in 1940. Now, the bola name is derived from boladero. It's an Argentine, yeah, here I go again. Uruguayan, there it is, lariat. But it also has been spelled bola. So either is correct. So I'm not going to hold you if you call it a bolo or a bola. It doesn't matter as far as I'm concerned. And this is a bola, which is a cord, 3 cords tied in the center with weights on the end that was used for hunting. And that has a whole history of its own as a hunting instrument way back into Neolithic times. They found bolos, they found Eskimo bolos, Native American bolos. So the bolo has been around a long time, but the bola pretty much since 1940. So now we have bola, string ties, and last but not least, the British term bootlace ties, which I had never heard until I started looking into this thing. Popularity began in the American Southwest in 1940 with sales by the local Native American silversmiths, and it generally is associated with the West. The British got involved in the 1950s and 60s, where they were fashionable with a British group called the Teddy Boys, a British rock and rhythm and blues group. Here again, the internet. The first milestone back in the U.S. on April 22nd, 1971, at that time, Governor Jack Williams made it Arizona's official necktie. So from 1940 to 1971, it was up for grabs. 1980, it became popular with rockabilly revivalists and new waver groups. 1988, they were in fashion with many of the Hollywood stars seen wearing bolos. But as with all fashion, things change. 1990s, they became popular in China and Japan as the U.S. popularity started to wane. However, their legacy was not dead yet. March 13th, 2007, New Mexico made it their state necktie, followed by Texas in the same year. So now we have 3 states that have, the bolo tie as their official neckwear for the state. Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico. More to follow. In 2013, they found like 14 NFL players from the San Diego Chargers and the Cincinnati Bengals were seen wearing ties. I paid particular notice to this guy, rapper Post Malone, at the 2023 Super Bowl. He was shown sporting a Bolo. I liked the conchos on his guitar strap too. Those were really pretty. But I wasn't listening to him. I was trying to check out his neckwear. And I do that whenever I see somebody wearing a bolo tie. The various parts were set aside in the original patent, but they still consist of a clasp of some sort. There's several different types. There's the loop clasp, like the one on the right. The center one is a tension clasp. The one I'm wearing is actually a reverse of that one. I've never seen one before like that. This is the first time I ever ran into that. And then you've got some sort of a stone or something affixed to the clasp. And then you, of course, have the tips. There's even instructions on how to straighten bolo cords using a hair dryer so that they hang straight. And there's 2 different lengths normally, is like a 32 and a 42-inch length. I prefer the long one, but I do have short ones in my collection. Since then, Popular has moved on to include actual fashion guides for how to wear them. You have formal, casual, and just plain on the outing, wearing a bolo with a t-shirt. This I've never done, but it's evidently acceptable. Then you can get into high fashion. You have wedding wear and formal wear. I've yet to figure out how they did the one on the right. I haven't figured out how they made the loop out of the cord, but one of these days I'll sit down and try to dope it out. And let's not forget the ladies. Somebody mentioned ladies. Okay, here is casual, very casual, or outing wear. Probably a little more formal in the middle and layered look, wearing 2 bolos at once. Now, bolos can be made of just about anything, and I try to do that when I'm looking for stuff to put on a bolo, but the prices get to be a little bit high if you actually, go out and shop for them at some of the high-end places. There's one of them is a Jim Herrero Silver Bisbee, $6,500. And then another one is a gold and silver one for $1,400. And then there's another one for $6,800. I don't get into ones quite that expensive. I'm not into high fashion, high price bolos. So where did it all start with me? For me, it started with square dancing. In the late 50s, my parents joined a square dance club in Buffalo. In the mid 60s, I joined a junior square dance club. And that started my love of the ties that were worn at the time for dancing, both Western bow and string ties, which is what I called them at that time. I wasn't calling them bolo, I called it a string tie. And men wore one of the other, either the bow tie with the long dangles on it, kind of like the Colonel Sanders tie, or a string tie. Well, enough for history. Okay. That's my history. Since then, and where I started in general, this is my collection, or some of my collection. The early days were all store bought. I wasn't making jewelry. I was just buying them to wear it, at dances and things like that. And uh, I have a moose. I joined the moose, so we had a moose bolo. My dad in the middle had that was his one that he wore square dancing. It's a very cheap store bought imitation turquoise and silver Thunderbird. And then the one on the right is for the Country Music Hall of Fame at Nashville. And we were there on a convention, so I had to buy one there. They can be all kinds. The older ones are all kinds of materials, as well as what I'm doing now. But I have a small one with a resin cast scorpion, and the owl is a carving. It's a wood carving, and the tips are wood carved. I have no idea where my dad got it from, but that's one that I found in his stuff after he passed away. So it's now part of my collection. The early years reflect the time I started square dancing and got into lapidary. And doing the lapidary work, I started, I was cutting stones. I've got on the left Kona dolomite from Michigan, center one's standard Wonderstone, and then dinosaur bone. And these were the commercially available settings at that time. Most of them were screw mounts. I don't know whether you're familiar with that or not, but if you can see my arrow, the two extensions on the side actually have screws on the back side, and the stones are in. You can change the stone out. But it was one of the fashionable things that was easily, acquired at a lapidary shop at that time. When I went to Michigan, I started picking up materials up there and also doing some polishing work. The one on the left is Kingston copper ore from the Kingston mine. The center one is a datolite that came from the Knowlton mine. And the one on the far right was from my father-in-law. He was into silversmithing and goldsmithing, and he mounted a piece of Mohawkite in silver for me. I started doing some of my own silver work. The one on the left was my father's. I made for him. And we had several trips out west, and we purchased stuff at places like Quartzsite, Tucson in the real early days. And the one on the right is one I built up of a very large turquoise nugget. In case you're wondering how big these things are, I didn't put any size in there, like a quarter sitting in there, but most of the tips are 2 inches long. So that gives you an idea of how big some of these stones are. That one is a large chunk of turquoise set in sterling with a opal intarsia in the center of it that I did. And that was my early attempts at silversmithing. The center one was done by a Native American, and it's turquoise from Quartzsite, Arizona. And Hopi God, it's Kokopelli, and it's a Tommy Moore. It has a Tommy Moore maker's mark, and I bought it in Tulsa, Oklahoma on a business trip. So I'm always looking for interesting things to wear. Back in West Virginia, I changed wives. I have now my present wife, who I adore, Bonnie, and no comment. And we were still dancing, and I got her into square dancing, and I wasn't doing any wire wraps at the time, but I was finding weird things to have people wire wrap for me. And one of the dealers at our show named Kit Kat. She's from up in the Baltimore area, I think. No,
Roanoke, Virginia.
Roanoke, Virginia. Okay. I don't know whether she's still around and rapping, but I haven't seen her at any shows. The one on the left is a Chinese Tektite, wrapped up to be like a hula girl with a grass skirt. The bat was the first thing I ever gave her to wrap. I said, "Can you make a bolo out of this?" And she looked at it and question went, yeah, I think. And she came back with this design, and I thought it was really good. Then she built a elephant for Bonnie and a snake. All these were purchased, at the local, at one of our dealers at our show, and I take it over to her and say, "Okay, make a bolo out of this." Well, things progressed. I still bought them. I still bought bolos. The one on the far left is a Datolite intarsia with copper and silver, and has copper silver stamp nuggets on the dangles on the tips. That was done by Don Brown, and he was an excellent intarsia person. It's quartz capped, so it's not going to scratch and not going to tarnish. The one in the middle was a splash cast copper from up in Michigan at Keweenaw Gem and Gift. He was making splash copper, and I saw that one, and I did a very crude copper wire wrap for that one. The one on the right is not a bat, but a dragon, and we got that at a Ren fair up in Ishpeming, and Kit Kat did that one for me. That's one of the last ones she did. I belong to a number of organizations. One of them is the Lions Club, and of course I had to have a bolo to suit. This was a refrigerator magnet that I turned into a bolo, and the cord was done by Bonnie. It's Japanese kumihimo, and it's done in the Lions Club colors. Other ones were given to me as gifts. Okay, the shark's tooth was done by Kit Kat, and she gave that to me at one of the shows. She says, "You're going to love this one I made for you." And my buddy, soapstone carving buddy, Ken Valco, who's now teaching at Wildacres and also going to be teaching at William Holland in soapstone carving, he got into silver work, and he gave me that for Christmas one year. He made it with a gem on it. This one has a very special place. It also has a pendant. Bonnie has a pendant to match, only hers is in red coral. And the stone is our West Virginia state stone, which is the fossil coral from Greenbrier and Pocahontas County. And it's done in sterling silver. And it has the state flower, rhododendron, on it. And it has an outhouse on it, including a little guy that sits inside the outhouse. Hers has a bear and an eagle and the New River on the back, and also a little gold outhouse. So I'm kind of jealous. Hers is gold. But this was given to me by a lady that spent some time with us, Nicole Answorth. She stayed with us in Michigan, collecting copper up in Michigan one summer, and she came back and she designed this thing. She's a jewelry designer, but she doesn't make her own stuff. She commissions them, and it was done by Catherine E. Rochon of Clinton, Louisiana. And I called her up. I said, "How the devil did you ever do this silver work?" And she says, "A whole lot of silver, a whole lot of solder steps." So that's a lot of work in that thing, and I really appreciate it. Others are ones that came out of old collections. The Cocopellion, in fact, all three of these came from the same person. I got Cocopelli, and actually have a gem tree mounted on a bolo. I didn't do that one, but that came out of another person's collection. They built it. And then a fairly simple bear claw and turquoise. Wildacres, once we started going to Wildacres and taking a lot of classes, one of the classes we took was fused glass. And these are the first attempts at fused glass. The one on the left is a square dance interlocking square on the front. I had a mountain sunrise and then just a plain pretty piece of glass, you know. It's called dichro glass. The second time around, we took the class, I got a little more involved. I was able to mount a silver J inside, and I have a belt buckle to match that one. And I did a Upper Peninsula with the copper country and copper up there in the Keweenaw Peninsula. Also Wildacres, but not as a project, but at the tailgate at the swamp. I was happy to acquire this from the now late Reven Selznick, but at the time his wife had passed away and she had made this piece in class, I believe there, or she had done it. I don't know when she did it, but this was done by his wife. And she did it in a Western motif with turquoise and coral. When I lost the use of my favorite bolo wrapping person, and having taken several wire wrap classes by various instructors, I finally do all my own wraps and mounts. The stones are some that I've cut, but most were found at shows and sales. I always keep an eye out for the unusual to be made into a tie. From now on, most of what you'll see are my creations of wire, stone, and other materials. We took silver clay, or they call precious metal clay. In that case, it was fine silver at Wildacres, first time we took it. And this was my final project. It's called Bad Day in Dino Land, complete with the meteor coming in. And it's got ginkgo leaves as on the ends of the dangles. That was my first attempt at after doing a whole bunch of girly type projects, you know, earring wires and other kind of, you know, pendants and things for women. I had to do something for myself, and this is what I came up with. The second time we did the class, it got a little more intense. This is, again, precious metal clay. It's wire wrapped in 14 karat gold fill. It has bees, a honey beehive, and a honey tree with vines running up the surface of it. It's got yellow CZs as honey dripping out, and it's extended down into the wire wrap with curls. And then the dangles are flowers with yellow centers, which are also CZs. So the second time around, just like marriage, it was better. More Wildacres creations that were done by me. I did on the left, it was my very first Intarsia class, and I really loved it. But that stone sat around for about 3 or 4 years before I finally had enough nerve to wrap it. The one in the center is just what it looks like. It's a Klondike bar wrapper. And I was sitting in the canteen one night at Wildacres after having my Klondike bar and sat there playing with the wrapper and folding it and bending it around, and finally made it into a very large disc and decided, yeah, that's going to be a bolo. And I took it to Michigan and had Ken Flood at Keweenaw Gem and Gifts cast it in resin so it was stiff enough to wrap. And I wrapped it in sterling, made the cord, and the cord, it takes 25 feet of cordage in multiple strands to produce a 48-inch bolo cord. The one above it is a pendant that I wrapped, a smaller Klondike rack for Bonnie. She wears it as a necklace. And The one on the far right is etched copper with, which also doubles as a belt buckle. One of the other classes we took. Not one of my favorite classes, but I still made something that I could wear. Things started to get larger. A large ammonite, opalized ammonite from Morocco. I found a source for large cabochons. This is a bumblebee jasper. I found a dealer that carries large ones. They're much bigger than 30 by 40. They're like 40 by 50 and larger. And I've started mounting those as bolos. And then the one on the far right is a piece of copal amber from Colombia that I picked up at the wholesale show in Franklin. And here again, that sat around for a long time before I finally figured out how to wrap it and put it on a cord. But now I wear it and everybody calls it the gummy bear. Like I said, things get kind of weird. The one on the left is a group of bismuth crystals. Again, that came from Keweenaw Gem and Griff. He was growing his own crystals up there and selling them. I saw that grouping and went, yep, that's got to be a bolo. The one in the center is a chalcedony geode from Mexico. And that one is, I acquired at auction at Wildacres. The guy that brought it in, he says, hey, look at this. I got Van Gogh's ear. So I wire wrapped it and then added the red beads on the side of it for blood. So I have Van Gogh's ear wrapped as a bolo. And the one on the far right is a piece of Tampa Bay coral, fossilized coral, that came out of a collection of one of our past members that passed away. So I sort of wear that in honor of her. But it was also a bear to wrap because I followed the outside of that thing religiously with the bands of wire trying to wrap it. But here again, as I got better at wrapping, things got weirder and bigger. The left-hand one is a slab out of a mammoth tooth. So that's my mammoth bolo. That one originally was going to be wire wrapped, but it broke. So I had to do some repair on it and ended up just mounting it with a simple glue mount on the back. The one in the center is the opalized ammonite from Alberta, Canada. That's the red flash. I did one for Bonnie as a pendant in the dragon fire, the dragon scale fire. And the right-hand one is Fairburn agate from South Dakota that I got off of Tamarack Mineral website. So I do hunt mineral websites for good things too. The left one is a rough piece of coral as it was found in a ditch in Greenbrier County that where it weathered out of the limestone it was in. I've done nothing to it but clean it up. It's all natural. The center one is Kambaba or crocodile jasper from Madagascar. And another piece, very large slab of dadolite that I picked up at the Ishpeming show once at a swap. The bigger slabs, generally I mount with these little curlicues because it takes a lot of silver to go around it and it adds to the weight of the tie. This one weighs about a pound. So and if they're uneven thicknesses, it helps in mounting it. If you tried it, I don't know how familiar you are with bundle wraps, but when you bundle wrap something, if the edges aren't the same thickness all the way around, it makes it real difficult to do a bundle wrap. So I went with a stickman pattern. And I use it a lot on some of them. But all three of these here were done with a bundle wrap system. I've got pitcher jasper on the left. The center is a slab of dadolite and matrix with copper, silver, and native copper and native silver in the matrix with dactylite, and then dendritic opal. Pink opal from Peru on the left came from Helen Saris Herman, who was our speaker coordinator or choir at Wildacres for the Eastern Federation. And she had a slab of that there, and she says, "Won't this make a nice, pretty bolo?" And I went, "Yes." And that was another one that was one of these 2-year projects where you pick it up and it sits on a shelf somewhere until you get around to working on it. This one I had to have a polish put on it, and I don't have a flat lap, so I had to come up with somebody to do the polishing for me. But I had that done. The one in the center is kind of special to me. It's a mineral specimen that came out of my mother's mineral collection, amethyst from Mexico, and I had taken it down to Wildacres with the intent of putting it in the auction, but nobody was bidding on minerals, so I just kept it and wrapped it as a bolo. The one on the right is a concretion from Morocco, but it's squared off. It was a really unusual shape for concretions, and they're heavily eroded and weathered by the sand. Got that at the Hickory show. Some things are kind of odd. The one on the left is coprolite that I picked up at a copper country auction. In fact, they put it in the auction and said, "This is going to make a nice bolo, Jim. You bid on it." So, of course, Jim had to get it. And the middle one came from one of our club members. It's paint from the Chevy Corvette paint line. So it's Vedite, Chevrolet Vedite. And this, the one on the right, is a goat's horn from Africa. And I picked that up at the Ishpeming show. One of the dealers had all kinds of them. And that was a real challenge to wrap because it's totally not flat on the back. Ken Valco brought this back to me. The original wire wrap that had been done by Kit back broke, and I had given it to him as a gift because he's a dog lover. He loves hounds, and I've since done another hound dog bolo for him for Christmas. But this one broke, and he asked me if I could repair it. I couldn't, so I did a complete remount for it. Yeah, that one is out of Unicite. I think the only thing from the original dog is the dog tag hanging on his neck. Everything else is new. I get stuff. Lady at Wildacres wanted me to make her bolo. She says, "I've got some stones at home. Can you make bolos out of them?" I said, "Yeah, sure." She says, "I'll send you some pictures." Well, she sent me the 4 stones, and these were interesting. The one on the left, the slide for the bolo is bigger than the stone was. So I ended up doing an unusual wire wrap. It's a bundle wrap, but it's laid flat all the way around the outside instead of hugging the stone. The other one is let's see what I got here, is petrified wood. Then they've got a jasper, and then the far right one is just a piece of vein agate from Texas. She likes to tumble, so I made these 4 of them up, and she gave them to her husband for Christmas. You may have noticed the size gets rather large at times, and I have a tendency to go to the ridiculous side some on sizes. This one weighs 2 pounds, and nothing is too outlandish. This is a Canadian concretion, and I call it the owl. But here again, I saw that and went, "Yeah, it's got to be a bolo." Unfortunately, it's a heavy bolo. I don't wear it that often or for that long, but I do wear it for people to notice it. The longest one by far is this one. It's a mastodon tusk, and it was that I wrapped after commissioning wildlife scrimshaw artist Sandy Brady that I met down at Wildacres. I took her course, but I found I could not draw, and I'd rather have her do it. And I couldn't draw worth beans, and I just let her do it for me. But it was another one of those long projects. I bought the tusk at Franklin, and over 2 years later, I finally got it back from her because she had a backlog of people that she was doing scrimshaw for, and she did the mastodon on it. And then I had to figure out how to wrap it, and that was a challenge in itself. Here again, this one I don't wear too much, but you can sit at a table with this. It doesn't hit anything. These are some that I've done just recently. This is a piece of petrified wood that I got at Jim Gray's Petrified Wood Company in Holbrook, Arizona. This spring, we went and did Route 66 all the way from Chicago to LA. And if you've never been to Jim Gray's Petrified Wood Company, it's a real treat. I have never seen so much petrified wood in my entire life. I think he's got more wood there than they have in the petrified forest. But I was looking for something at the trip, and I wanted something that was pretty much a whole log section, and I finally found one. It's not that big, but it's pretty, and it was already polished. On our trip, we ended up at Bishop, California, and ended up there during Mule Days. And we were passing through there, and we stopped there for the night and went to an arts and crafts fair. Well, there was a couple there that were selling rocks and gems and had gems jewelry and stuff mounted, and they had this slab of Death Valley jasper that was collected in Death Valley before it was a park. They had all the documentation to show that it came out during the good old days. In fact, they ran into one of the rangers that told them he knew exactly where it came from, but it had come out long before it was a park. And here again, it's Kokopelli, and that's Bonnie's favorite guy. She calls him Hoochie Coochie Man. And he is a trickster, and he is also a fertility god, both for people and for crops. So I worked that into the wrap where I've got a plant coming up where he's coaxing the plant out of the ground with his flute. Another long project is a slab Larimore that I had to have repolished because it had a lousy polish on it and it had a lot of saw cut marks in it that I picked up at Franklin at the wholesale show. And it's really a stunning, pretty piece of Larimar, like a whole nodule slab out of a whole nodule at Larimar. Now with modern technology, we get into 3D printers. And 3D printers can produce just about anything. This is done, it's a crystal dragon, and it was done in plastic, and it's articulated. Of course, you can't see that on the screen, but it's totally articulated. The legs move, the tail swings back and forth, and the crystals are actually hexagonal. The tips are a little long for quartz, but it's a nice little crystal dragon. But it's also fluorescent and phosphorescent. So if you go to a nightclub that has black lights, this will show. If you go inside in the dark after being out in the bright sun, it'll sit there and glow. I've still got a backlog of materials, just waiting for the right time and inspiration to strike and the right wire wrap mount design to magically appear. What it'll be next, I have no idea, but come and see it in person if you can, either at Wildacres or William Holland. I'll be down there again in June. Hopefully I'll be at Wildacres in May. I hope they're going to be open. They got hit real bad with this hurricane and they are closed down now until next year. Next year starts like in April. So they're going to be doing a lot of repairs on the road. They still don't have any power, don't have any water, don't have anything, and they're up on the top of the mountain and pretty much inaccessible. What we heard is that they were going to be, or they had to airlift people out by helicopter from there. They couldn't get out. I think the workers stayed, and they're probably getting in and out by four-wheeler, but normal people could get it in and out by car. Now, what they did with the cars that were brought up there, I don't know, but they took them out, and I think they took them to Marion, which got hit, but not too bad. And then they had to find their way home from there, and that would have been interesting. So, not the end, but I'm still tied up with Bolos. Any questions?
That was fantastic, Jim.
Absolutely.
I have a question. You didn't show any pictures of the back of the Bolos so we could see how they attach.
That's a trade secret. No. Get the one that's laying on the tray down there. We'll try this. I know this camera, the one that's laying there. There's a Bolo laying there. I know it doesn't need a tie. She was wanting to know how it's attached. Get the other one down there that's just a spider. This is a bundle wrap, okay? It's completed. I don't have the tie on it, the cords on it yet. Over on
Can
the
you
tray.
can you explain that a little? Like in the centers, is that just talk a little about it?
What's that?
A little bit about
Talk a little bit about it. Well, the thing here in the center is the slide itself. Okay. Here's another slide that has wires attached. There's no stone in it yet. I've got a piece of blue forest agate over there that's going in this one. But I guess most of your people or most of the people in DC Club are into minerals, correct? Not too many jewelry makers. Okay, this is what I learned as stick man, which is a simple mount where you bundle a bunch of wires together and you got all these legs sticking out. And this particular type back has got, I'm getting away from the camera. It's got it's got 3 holes in it, one up here, one there, and one here. And I actually run the wire, I bend the wire and feed it through the holes and then run it up top and bottom. And then I run another additional wire up each side to get more legs. And you can put any number of legs on it if you want. Most of the ones that you saw with the little curly cues on the ends were done in a stickman pattern. This one is what they call I call it a bundle wrap. You take a whole bunch of square wire. I'm sorry, I'm getting away from the camera. It's a mixture of square wires, twisted square wire, and flat and regular square wire. Then it's bound together with flat half round wire to tie it together, and you end up pulling wires in so that some of them are on top of the stone. On the back, you do the same thing. to keep the stone within the bundle. And there's same thing here and here. And then you end up with a whole bunch of wires down here to come together. This one's got like, trying to think, I think it's 18 wires. So when you bundle it together here at the bottom, you have to do something with all those wires. You can cut them off. On this one, there was a bunch of garbage looking stuff in this slab that I really didn't like. So I ran some curly cues up here and covered it up. And it's a good thing to do if you're mounting, if you got a defect in a cab, but the cab's really pretty, or it's got a pit in it that doesn't have pretty crystals in it, and you can run stuff across it or cover up those little defects with your mount. And I don't do any hot silver work. I'm strictly wire wrap now. And you do the bundle wrap, and then you do a stick man. This one's only got 2 hands and 2 legs, and he gets tied to here, 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 and here, and that will hold the cord. The cord goes down through here and down through here. I haven't put the cord on it yet. But basically, every one you saw in there is either this design or this design, with variations of length of wire, number of wraps. This one's got a lot of wraps on it because it's a really thick slab. I don't like thick slabs, but that's what this is being done for somebody. I wouldn't have picked this slab myself to wrap, but she wanted it, so I'm doing it for her husband again.
Okay, excuse my ignorance, but especially for the heavy ones, what prevents them from sliding down off the cord?
The back, this little thing right here is spring loaded, and there's the cord goes through here, and then this pitches the cord.
Okay.
You push this down, slide the cord through, and that's how you adjust it. You push it in and slide it up and down. I'll take this one out. This is the one. Now this one was done. This was done given to me as a gift. So this is called butchite. It's a local term for float copper that's been polished. Had highlights polished on it. And this one was just glued on the back. Yeah. And I do glue them occasionally. It all depends on what I'm into. But this one's kind of backwards. See, the spring on this one's on the bottom. The spring on the ones I'm using is on the top. I've never seen one like this, but evidently this was popular at one time because this has been around a while. Like I said, I got that from Steve Weinberger and from Eastern Federation, and I guess he and Carolyn were out there, in the Upper Peninsula. They had been. I knew they went up there micromount collecting, and they must have bought that at the local rock shop. That's one of the problems at getting them from somebody, unless they know where it came from. Trying to pin down, what the stone is. Of course, I knew what that one was when I saw it. But 2 of the others he gave me, one of them was Tampa Bay coral. That was easy. Another one was a botryoidal chalcedony red, which I had never seen. That took a while on the internet before I finally found where it came from. It comes from a real obscure location in Arizona. He couldn't remember where they got, he knew they got it out west somewhere, but he didn't know where. But I finally tracked down where the stone came from. I'm a little bit anal when it comes to, cataloging stuff. right? See the number? I even catalog the Bolos. I mean, I've got pictures of them. It's a picture catalog, and an index card catalog as well. I've got it on the computer, and I've got it, on hard copy.
So how many do you have total?
I have no idea. It's somewhere between 50 and 100. Okay. Or it's close to 100. But when I go to Wildacres, I'm there for 7 days, and I wear between 2 and 4 a day. And that doesn't even touch it. And what I showed you here doesn't touch, it only a minor proportion of what I've got. It's some of the more outlandish ones, and the prettier ones, and the ones I've done recently. The more I get into wire wrap, the more I like it, and I like the challenge. That mastodon tusk was a killer. That one took me a while to figure out a wrap on it.
So what is your mineral history background and interest beyond Bolos?
Mineral interest, Michigan copper country. That's what I specialize in. And also native copper crystals from other locations. I don't care where they're from. I've got some from Iran and the Kakistan or whatever it is in Russia. I pick them up on the web and from different dealers when I see them. And I'm always looking for more stuff, dowdleites and stuff from Michigan.
Question, what's the time commitment range on these? It looks like an extraordinary amount of really intricate work.
Yes. I don't charge I don't charge basically for my time that much, this one is there's like $50 worth of silver in it.
Well, I was thinking about time though. How much
time? A couple of days. I mean, off and on. You can't sit down and just make it. It takes me a while on a bundle wrap. Like with all those wires, you have to cut them all. You gotta stick them together with. I stick them together with quilter's tape to hold them together, and then I start bending around, and I'll wrap it. I wrap them as I go. Yeah, I actually do a design first. I do it on paper to start with. Outline the slab, decide where this is going to set, get a basic idea. You can't pull these things on a negative curve, so you got to bundle it on a curve or a flat. You can't pull it. There's no stretch when you're mounting. You have to have some give, and you can only do that on an outside curve. It works out that way. Sorry, this is the front. Okay, but see, I actually pulled two here. I ended up with an extra wire on the front, so I did a double pull on the front instead of a single. I did a single pull on the back. I had to have at least one pull on the back to be able to put the stick man on the back here to connect the slide.
I want to go back to John's question that was very interesting about Jim's background. And I want to refer you to the presentation he made about 2 years ago, because it is a stunning portrait really of the copper, the native copper, which is tremendously abundant. And so with Jim's engineering background and mining background for 30 years and so forth, it's really an interesting exploration. And I think the Smithsonian has a big chunk of it, does it not?
Yeah. They've got the Ontonagon boulder, but it's not on display anymore. I guess it's still in dispute who owns it. between the Native American tribes that originally showed the white men where it was, and then they hauled it off. So I think they want it back, but they have other beautiful specimens of crystal and copper there as well. And of course, the Seaman Museum up there is world renowned for its copper crystals, being right in the heart of the copper country. And their collections date back to the mid 1800s on up into 1900 plus. And there's other things up. You've got the normal things. You got copper, silver, dadolite, greenstone. That's what most people associate with it. And of course, agates. And now you got euperlite, which is a trade name for fluorescent sodalite that came down from Canada. It's not even native up there. It's a transplant from the glaciers. But there's like 80 some minerals up there, if you want to collect minerals. But the more you get into the rarer stuff, of course, it's like micromount, it's micromounting, it's micromount stuff. And even up there to find malachite, it's a micro in most cases. If you find crystals, they're micros, because it just wasn't a oxidized zone. It's native. The oxide layer went with the glacier. If there was any, it's gone. It got tore off by the glacier.
Jim, how do you spell dadolite? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the mineral.
Yeah. DATOLITE.
Okay. Thank you.
Datolite.
That was the copper silver. Well, that was beautiful.
It's a boron aluminum silicate. Why it's there, I have no idea. I don't know whether anybody's ever really determined it, but it occurs up there in nodular form in all the colors of the rainbow: blue, green, yellow, orange, red, brown, white, multiple colors. And but it's nodular, like I guess in New Jersey they have dadolite, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But it's crystal. They're dadolite crystals. They do have crystals up there too. Not often. I mean, they did find crystal and dadolite. Of course, they weren't mining for that, so it went out on the dump. But it's and a lot of them have copper inclusions. They're real pretty, but they're small. Not necessarily micro. They're maybe macro size. They're like 1/8 of an inch or something like that, 1/4 inch. And they have real fine stringers of copper. And of course, they got the copper agates now too. Yeah. Of course, the copper agates have been around since the 50s, but they just, they found a big load of them at CNH 21 mine, and they just flooded the market with the super things. And the price took a nosedive. Before that, they were really rare. Nobody knew that many places to find them. There's a couple of local collectors that knew where the old mines had them, and which mines had them, and they collected them and polished them, but they didn't tell anybody where they were at. And then they found the club had a dig up there at CNH 21, and they got into all these amygdules in the lava, and they were agates. And when they started polishing them, they had copper bands in them. In between the bands, they had agate and copper and agate and copper.
Fascinating. Jim,
I cut you off, sorry.
You're certainly an artist. Some of the stuff you've done is incredible. One thing I never hear
I don't consider myself a fantastic wire wrapper. Okay, I've had a couple of formal classes at Wildacres and some at the club, and then I just started playing with it, and learning as I go what works and what doesn't. I tried to do a prong mount like I did on a couple of those Bolos for the lady from Wildacres, and I cracked every one of the wires, and I finally gave up on it. I evidently had some softer wire when I mounted them before, and I haven't been able to duplicate that prong mount. I'm going to have to get some, dead soft wire to be able to bend it that far and get it to stay there without cracking.
Jim, let me just jump in here and answer Brian's
Okay.
question
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
So I have 3 copies of Rocks and Minerals magazine. Sorry, this is
Okay, Michigan Datolite, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, that is a great article.
Yeah.
It's one of the 3 issues that I own, but anyway.
There's a bunch of them that had minerals from Michigan in them.
Thank you.
Jim, one thing I never hear you mention from Michigan is the copper included calcite. That's my favorite.
I'm not going to wear one of those. They're too fragile and too expensive.
They would make a beautiful bolo.
Not in the size I like, believe me.
How about some rutilated quartz?
Yeah, rutilated,
I love it.
about that big would be nice,
Something about the inclusions, mineral inclusions.
Yeah.
I know Kathy Recta's real big on it too, especially in the micros, but you can see the rutile inside of the quartz. Just something I had in my pocket. But
Yeah, if I find, I'm always looking for interesting things. I got a box down here with some big slabs of petrified wood, some weird stuff, and some more of the big ovals, from Madagascar. I didn't have it in the program, but I've got one that's it's copper. No, it's chalcedony. No, it's copper in chalcedony from Indonesia. They got a copper mine there, and they're mining copper, but they have native copper too, and it occurs in chalcedony there, and it's cut it. You can cut it and polish it.
Wow.
It's really pretty stuff. But I got a big one. That wasn't in the program. That's one, one of the 100 and some or less than 100 bolos. I just can't put them all on the program. It just take too long.
Well, it's very interesting, to say the least. I do like your bad day in Dino Land. That was pretty cool. And the Klondike, of course.
The Klondike bar. Yeah, I get more comments when I walk into the canteen wearing that at Wildacres, with the Klondike bar. That they sort of look for that up at Wildacres now. You going to wear the Klondike bar? Yeah, I'll wear it sometime.
That's cool. Well, do we have any more questions for Jim?
I'd just like to make a comment. This is another example of the sort of branching out of interest and specialization that our species seems to come up with all over all sorts of fields. But this was a treat. And I think since this was recorded, this will be available on the web. I'd love to show my wife.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I'll let you record it.
Thank you.
I know the Copper Country one got out there, and everybody, it gets a lot of hits.
Thank you.
I have one more question. I noticed some of your, Jim, some of your bolos you had with silver chains and other ones you had with the cord. Do you interchange them, or do you actually design the bolo to go with either a chain or a cord?
I don't have them on chains.
Okay.
None of them are chains. The closest one is that the Klondike bar is on the Keweenaw cord, but one of the cords is a silvered wire. It's a silver and blue mix, just like the Klondike bar thing. It was what kind of cord? Embroidery thread.
Okay.
Jim, I have one question. Once you put the cord through, do you put the tip on afterwards?
Yes. Yeah. That's the problem with this style mount. You can't undo it, without taking the tips off. You can take one tip off and then feed it back through and change the cord. But once you put the tips, glue the tips on, you can't get them back out of there. Because the tip won't go back through the slide. It's not made that way.
Falling off.
Yeah.
It won't fall off.
Well, it won't fall. There's enough pressure that thing grabs it. There's other style tips also. They've got a one that flips over. That one kind of damages the cord more. And then the real simple, I don't have one here. The real simple, it's yeah. It comes out and it just curls around like this, and you can snap the cords into it. That was they call it a double loop system. The other one is the one on the back of the silver one with the West Virginia coral. That's actually two large coils of wire on the back. That's a silversmithing type mount. There's I've run into about 5, 6, 7 different types of mounts that you can put on the back. When I did the silver ones with the turquoise that I did in sterling, that one was actually soldered to the back was soldered to the mount.
Very good. Well, thank you, Jim. That was really entertaining.
Anybody, is there something in chat there that I missed, or is that something? Let's see. Geology news. Okay, no. Looks like Bat and Dragon.
Jim, there you go. We got Bonnie in the frame. I wanted to say, give Bonnie some credit. Get her in the camera.
Ta-da! There she is. She's over here giving me pointers.
Good job, Bonnie.
Like
Good
talk
job.
up, speak louder, all that good stuff.
There you go.
Very good. Well, thank you.
Okay, it's been a pleasure.